right, Shelby, it's 6:05, so if you want to flip back a slide, that'd be great. So before we begin, I just wanted to share a few Zoom tips. Zoom controls are at the bottom of your screen. We'll be recording this meeting and posting it to the project webpage after tonight. If you don't wish to be recorded during the meeting, please turn off your microphone and camera. We want to ensure that this meeting is a pleasant experience for all and everyone can hear what the information that's being shared. So I believe we have everyone muted for the presentation portion, and we'll be unmuting folks for the discussion Q&A. If there's a lot of background noise or proper behavior, we may mute you, just a heads up. So, and then one really good tip that I've learned over the years is I have some trouble hearing, and there's actually a closed caption feature for Zoom. I believe it's in the more, the three dots with the more section, and it says captions. You can actually turn on closed captions. Which is really helpful, I think, especially when you're seeing getting a lot of information about projects. And you do have the opportunity to use the chat function this evening, and so we'll have an opportunity to engage with that during the presentation. And if you are joining over phone, I'm not sure anybody is, but you can raise your hand by doing *9 during the Q&A portion. Next slide. So with that, I'd like to welcome you to the first community meeting for the Blessing of the Bay Greenway project. Thank you so much for attending. Tonight's meeting will begin with an introduction to the project and will be followed by an overview of regional and local studies that have informed the project's development to date. We'll share some history and context of the project site along Shore Drive at Blessing of the Bay Park, as well as completed work to date as part of the park's revitalization. Lastly, we will introduce the Greenways project and then provide ample time for the moderation of questions, comments, and discussion. Before beginning and diving in, I'd like to take a moment to allow any members of our municipal and state elected delegations to say hi and share a word. I do see Councilor Clingan has joined us this evening. I'm not sure if anyone else has, but Councilor, if you would like to introduce and say hi, please raise your hand so that you can be muted. All right. We're welcome to do so at any point. Just let us know. Next slide, please. My name is Carl Alexander, and I serve as the Greenways Program Manager for the Mystic River Watershed Association. We are a 501c3 non-government organization whose mission is to protect and restore the Mystic River and its tributaries. Our vision is a healthy, vibrant, and resilient Mystic River watershed for the benefit of all of our community members. Over the years, we've worked with thousands of Somerville residents to protect water quality, restore important habitats, build climate resilience, transform parks and paths, inspire youth, and grow community. This includes stewarding the revitalization of Blessing of the Bay Park, which began in 2018. Councilor Clingan, I see you just rejoined. Isaiah, can you unmute Councilor Clingan briefly?
Yep, give me 1 second.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for the opportunity. I really just want to say hi to everybody, and looking forward to hearing more about this this project and working with you all to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm joined here this evening by our project partners at the City of Somerville and our consultant team, which is comprised of Offshoots Productive Landscapes, the Horsley Witten Group, and environmental partners. First, I'll hand it over to the City of Somerville to introduce themselves. John?
Thank you very much, Carl. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Mayor Ballantyne and Ward 4 City Councilor Clingan, we thank you all for joining us in this discussion of the Blessing of the Bay Greenway project. We're really thrilled to partner with the Mystic River Watershed Association, also known as MyRWA, on this initiative. We appreciate the talented team MyRWA has assembled, including, as Carl said, including Offshoots as the lead landscape architects, alongside Horsley Witten Group and environmental partners as the sub-consultants. From the city side, my name is John Bronincant. I'm a senior public space planner in the Public Space and Urban Forestry Department, and I'm joined by Meg Coughlin, also a public space planner in our department. We really look forward to collaborating on this exciting project.
Thank you, John. Now I'll turn it over to Offshoots to introduce the consultant team. Shelby.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shelby Chapman Hale. I am, as Carl said, a landscape architect with Offshoots. I'm joined tonight by my colleague, Jack Beresford, and we've been working in the Blessing of the Bay Park area since about 2018. So we're really excited to be working on this next phase of design. I'll hand it back over to you, Carl.
Okay, thank you. And Hannah from Horsley Witten.
Hi, everyone. I am Hannah Carlson, a landscape architect as well. I work at Horsley Witten Group, so we're providing the civil and green infrastructure component to the design. And with Shelby, we've been working on this project with Offshoots since 2018. So I'm really excited to be here on the call with all of you guys, getting re-engaged. And I'll hand it back.
Yeah, lastly, I'll hand it over to Jim from Environmental Partners.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jim Fitzgerald. I'm a principal at Environmental Partners, 30 years of being in the transportation engineering business. So we really have taken a strong focus on complete streets and achieving the right balance to provide safe bike and pedestrian facilities while maintaining motorists traveling at the appropriate speeds. I'm just very happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jim. Next slide. The project was initially conceptualized in a plan that was funded by the Somerville Community Preservation Act and also a generous contribution from the Lawrence and Lillian Solomon Foundation. The design and permitting work that we are introducing here tonight is being funded with a second Community Preservation Act grant and an earmark in the state budget thanks to the Office of Representative Christine Barber. While we are still raising funds for the full cost of the project's construction, we have received construction funds to date from the Somerville Community Preservation Act and the state's Mass Trails program. Next slide. With the amount of Community Preservation Act funding going towards Blessing the Bay Parks revitalization, this is a good time to share with everyone a reminder about Somerville ballot question number 6, which seeks an increase in the surcharge that funds the Somerville Community Preservation Act for open space, affordable housing, and historic preservation in the city. You can learn more about the city's community preservation, or you can learn more at the city's Community Preservation Act website. Next slide, please. The project is located along Shore Drive at Blessing of the Bay Park in the 10 Hills neighborhood of Somerville and is located on City of Somerville property. It serves as the location serves as a primary gateway to the Mystic River, as well as vital economic and transportation resources at Assembly Row and Wellington Station. The project site is also immediately adjacent to the Mystic Housing Development and the Healy School. Next slide, please. While the present context and location of the project is known to many of you, we do wish to honor and acknowledge the indigenous communities native to this region in its past, present, and future. The watershed that we serve is on the colonized lands of the Massachusetts, Nipmuc, and Pawtucket tribes. And as you explore the watershed, we encourage you to learn with us about its past and current indigenous heritage. Next slide, please. The Greenway is being designed within the existing Shore Drive right-of-way on the side immediately abutting Blessing of the Bay Park. The City of Somerville owns all of Shore Drive, including its sidewalks, and also a small sliver around 1 foot, that's around 1 foot of the parkland. The Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation owns the vast majority of Blessing of the Bay Park and the shoreline. While we're focusing tonight on the Greenway component of work at Blessing of the Bay, we're doing a lot of other work to reduce the amount of invasive species at the park, establish a habitat for pollinators, plant trees, and improve views of and access to the river. Next slide, please. The project's goals are to improve safety, accessibility, and public health outcomes, improve the ecology of Blessing of the Bay Park and the Mystic River, enhance recreational experience, and promote walking, biking, and rolling for travel. Lastly, connect the neighboring community to the Mystic River and provide access to the Mystic River shoreline. Next slide, please. If at this point you're asking yourself, what's a greenway? We have you covered. A greenway is a named, designated, non-motorized pathway that intentionally connects places, is designed for users of all ages and abilities, and is some combination of shared use paths, bike lanes, slow streets, bike routes, and green stormwater infrastructure. I think a really good example is the Somerville Community Path, which runs through the spine of the city. Next slide, please. Why are greenways important? There's a really good report that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts published a few years ago on their benefits. They can help to improve local economies by improving access to businesses and outdoor recreation. They help to improve mental and physical wellness for the community. They provide safe spaces for walking, biking, rolling, and strolling as part of a connected network. They can provide benefits to the local environment, such as introducing plant species and improve stormwater management and improve climate resiliency in the form of reducing urban heat island effect. And lastly, they provide a public space for people of all ages and abilities to move and just be themselves. Next slide, please. There are numerous plans and studies that have informed this project and our work to date. The project is part of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Mass Trails Priority Network Vision Plan, which prioritizes state resources for trails and greenways projects included in this very important network. Next slide. The Mystic River Master Plan, which was published by the Department of Conservation and Recreation, called for a connected greenways network, improved recreational facilities, and ecological restoration along the Mystic River shoreline. Next slide. In the Mystic River Watershed has our Mystic Greenways vision, which aims to connect 25 miles of parks and paths from the Mystic Lakes downstream to the Boston Harbor. Blessing the Bay Park is a key gap right now for all of these regional plans. Next slide. Locally, the city's bike network plan, which was published in 2023, calls for an off-street path at this particular location. Next slide. The 2016 Healy Mystic Master Plan sought to provide a community vision for improving accessibility for folks between the Healy School, Mystic Housing, and Blessing the Bay Park, and called for improved facilities, again, for people walking, biking, rolling, and strolling. Next slide, please. The city's climate risk assessment flags Blessing in the Bay as a location where interventions to address urban heat island effect and flooding should be considered. Next slide. The project location is also in all three priority areas for the recently published Pollinator Action Plan. Check it out if you haven't yet. Due to its proximity to the river, its adjacency to Ward 1, and its existing ecology. Next slide, please. Lastly, and we'll dive into more detail of this plan shortly, but the Mystic River Watershed Association worked with community members and groups to publish in 2018 a master plan for the Blessing of the Bay Park's revitalization and outlined a series of improvements needed for the park, and also a greenway around the park's perimeter was the #1 recommended improvement. Now I'm going to hand it over to Shelley from Offshoots, who will begin by sharing history and context of the site. Shelley?
Great, thanks so much. So as Carl mentioned just a minute ago, the land that this project takes place on was previously home to the Nipmuc, Massachusetts, and Pawtucket tribes, and until it was colonized. And in the 1600s, the King of England gave a 600-acre portion of land along the Mystic River to the first governor of Massachusetts, John Winthrop. And on this land, he had a farm called 10 Hills Farm. And he commissioned the building of the first ship to be built, the first of very many ships to be built on the Mystic River, the second ship, I should say, by European settlers to be built, and the second to be built in the United States, which was known as the Blessing of the Bay. And over time, this 600 acres was developed and changed hands and is now known as Medford and Somerville, and a portion of it currently known as 10 Hills still, which is where our project is located. And over time, this area, as you can expect, this map's from 1884, as you can expect, it's changed a bit since then. So here is an aerial photo showing you the site, the Blessing of the Bay Park in 1952 with a more natural river edge. And then things changed and developed and the interstate came in and the river changed along this portion of the site. And here we are in 2015, somewhat recent history here, and what the vegetation has changed over time, but starting to look a little bit more like what we might recognize it as. In 2017, as Carl mentioned, the Mystic River Watershed Association and Groundworks began outreach and asked the question, what would you like to see and do with the Mystic River waterfront? And I'm guessing some of the people on this meeting tonight were a part of those 1,072 engagements that they had. And that work led directly to the visioning process that began in 2018. And this process was, as we mentioned at the beginning, Horsley Witten and Offshoots were hired to assist on this project, and it was in collaboration with very many people: MyRWA, the city, the CPA, Mystic Tenants, DCR, Groundworks, Solomon Foundation, and many, many community members who came to a series of public meetings, site events, and that we chatted with at the Herring Run and various events on site. And that public outreach process led to this vision for what the park could be. And so some of the key things that we heard from the community that made it into this plan was that there was a desire to have passive open space on site, places that people could relax in, do quiet activities, potentially opportunity for informal play areas, have a connection to the river. You know, this is a very special site with this river access. So could we think about how folks could connect back to that over time, including having new walking paths that might be closer to the river, thinking about improving the ecology of the vegetation on site. There was a desire to improve the health of the meadows, the shrublands, and the woodlands on the site, traffic calming elements along Shore Drive, and a shared use path that you can see here running along the edge of the park and Shore Drive, complete with green infrastructure to treat the stormwater on site and street trees. Another fun outreach component of this project that happened in 2019 was this living tapestry installation. Some of you may have seen it on the boathouse. This was an artist, Carolyn Lewinberg, who we collaborated with to have volunteers collect invasive vines from the site and create an art installation that depicted the diversity of tree species existing on the site. So since then, there has been a great effort in starting to put this vision into practice. So in 2020, some of the initial work was done. There was a DCR project where they put in 20+ new trees, repaved paths, and replaced benches. And in 2021, the boathouse got a little update with a new art installation and signage. And also in 2021, a native meadow installation began. And I'm going to hand it over to Jack Beresford, who's been closely involved in that process, to describe it.
Great, thanks, Shelby. So yeah, I can talk a little bit about that native meadow installation that took place. So as Shelby said, part of that original master planning process was identifying certain sites on certain areas on the site that might be good for potential meadow installation. So we identified 3 areas and ended up securing funding to test out one meadow installation at one site, which was the corner of Shore Drive and Route 28, with the idea being that if this was a successful installation, if the meadow became established and was a success, it could be used as a template for something that Somerville might repeat around the city, kind of treat it like a pilot section of meadow. Next slide. And so one of the biggest takeaways from this for us, it was a learning experience for Offshoots as well. One of the biggest takeaways was that these things take time. There's a lot of involvement and ongoing monitoring and work that takes place to get these things up and running. Unfortunately, a meadow doesn't just take place overnight. So there's a lot of work involved. So you're seeing some of that initial site preparation work here. It's right next to the Mystic River, obviously. So we laid down erosion control fabric to prevent any degradation of the river. And then we stripped the entire site mechanically to try to avoid using as many herbicides as possible on the site. So kind of gave ourselves a blank canvas there to work with. Next slide. And here you can see some members of Offshoot's team actually mixing in that native seed and sowing that into the site. Next slide. And so on the left, you can see some initial germination from that very first year. And again, things got started off slowly, which we expected. And then in the middle and on the right side of the screen, you could see after the first year, so this would technically be the second year, we're calling it years 1. We're getting a little bit of germination. We're getting some of the plants that we had intended to be popping out. But it was a little bit of a tricky year for the weather. So we weren't sure if there were other things we should be doing. So we collaborated with Larry Wiener, Landscape Associates, who are meadow experts who have been helping us kind of guide us through the process a bit. Like I said, it's a learning experience for us as well. So during that year after our initial seeding, we decided to install small live plant plugs as well into the site to give a bit of a boost of the native plants that we were hoping to have pop up. Next slide. And so a year following that plug installation, you can see, and this is the current calendar year, 2024, we saw quite a few explosions of color popping up, which we were really excited about in the spring and summer. And even a few of the more slower growing plants we saw popping up as well. And we anticipate seeing a few more of those slower germinating, slower growing plants pop up next year and in coming years as well. Next slide. So again, this is an ongoing process, and members from Offshoot's team are there on a weekly basis, pretty much monitoring the site and checking in on ongoing process and conducting ongoing work. And so we wanted the dialogue with the community to continue and to let folks know what has been going on there. So we had an open community meeting on the site where we kind of gave an information blurb to everyone, let everyone know what was going on, gave an update on the process. And on the left, that's us meeting out with Larry Wiener, Landscape Associates, and kind of getting a sense for what their recommendations might have been for ongoing maintenance. Next slide. And another element of the Meadow project were these firefly sculptures, which were designed in collaboration with, again, that local artist, Carolyn Lewinberg, and the Healy School students to come up with these firefly sculptures, which are a nod to the pollinators that we're hoping to attract with this native meadow. And these were designed to be a temporary installation that, since we knew there would be quite a bit of a wait time before anything really exciting and fun filled into the site with flowers and meadow grasses, we wanted to have something there to kind of fill the space in the meantime. So that was kind of the design thought behind the fireflies. So those went in 2022, and they were originally intended to be temporary, but they're still there, you know, making their home out in the meadow. Next slide. And another element of the work that is ongoing at Blessing of the Bay, also kind of keeping in tune with that original master plan vision, is some shoreline invasive management that has been taking place. So Offshoot's team members have been out on site, and this is ongoing right now, cleaning up and enhancing and remediating the shoreline directly along Mystic River. So here you could see members of the team cleaning up that edge line. And the intent here is to do a few things. Firstly, we don't want any of those invasive non-native plants that had kind of taken over the edge to carry into the meadow that we had installed. But also, this gives us an opportunity to install new native habitat enhancing plantings and to clear out the understory from the invasive and thickety plants that had kind of taken over and had blocked the views to the water. So we're getting kind of a threefold benefit from this work. And here Shelby's showing some of the plantings that the new plantings that we're installing to replace some of the aggressive and noxious weeds that were kind of existing on site already. Next slide. I think with that, I'll hand it back to Shelby.
Yeah, and I just want to put in a plug here quickly for these plants. As these were selected, with the pollinator action plan going out this week, these were selected to support that work as well. So making sure that we're thinking about our pollinators throughout the seasons. So as you've just heard, there has been a fair amount of the vision that has been slowly getting checked off over time, and this will be ongoing. And the next item on the list is the Greenway, which is what we're here to talk about tonight. So we're going to talk through this just briefly, give you a little update on where we're at. So as Carl mentioned, you showed this slide earlier, the project scope is going to be within the right-of-way with this primary focus of working on the Greenway, the invasive species management, and that river, the top of the river access portion that Jack just talked about. And then in this Greenway Shore Drive project area, really thinking about some of the vision that came up in 2018 from the community, thinking about green infrastructure, street trees, pollinator habitat, increasing the ecological value of the site through this project. So here we are, Shore Drive. The green area highlighted here is more or less the right of way. There's a little artistic license, I think, here, but this red line through it shows where we're going to zoom in on one spot to show you what the existing street profile is, and and then talk about what that might look like in the future. So here in that spot, which you can see there is right by Curtin, is the existing street profile. So this is just one spot of many, but just to give a little snapshot, you can see that from the right-of-way is about 50 feet in this area, but we're anticipating, as Carl said at the beginning, I believe you said this at the beginning, maybe you didn't, that we are going to anticipate working from that southern curb line over to the right-of-way within the DCR land on the north. So really trying to keep the existing sidewalk to the south as is to the extent that we can. And then in this same section, we have been meeting with folks at the city, MyRWA, our consultant team, and DCR to talk through what the best practice, the best way to take the vision from 2018 and apply it in the site. And so the concept that we're moving forward with as of now is this idea of having a shared use path. We're showing 12 feet. I think 10 foot would be the minimum best practice. Off on the left, this is a little confusing here. Left is to the north. So if you were to continue off the page to the left would be the park and the Mystic River. And so the idea would be on that side of the street, there could be a shared use path, street trees, hopefully on either side, potentially planting or green infrastructure. We'll talk about what that is a little bit more in a second. And then two-way drive aisle and parking in the street. So just to help visualize what this might look like a little bit, we're going to walk through a couple of precedent images. So here's some that you probably know. Some of you maybe have even commuted on these today. On the top left, Cambridge Crossing, top right, Somerville Community Path. Good examples of shared use paths. So enough space that you can have bikers, walkers, rollerbladers, unicyclists, you name it. People have enough room to go in both directions. Street trees, we've mentioned street trees. Street trees are so important for humans, for the microclimate benefits of the cooling as climate changes, the cooling benefits, as well as in urban areas, taking pollution out of the air and the ground, and also really important for wildlife, really important floral resource for pollinators, as well as resources for host plants for things like moths and butterflies and other wildlife as well. And then coupling that planting benefit with what's happening with the stormwater. So rain that falls on the road or on the path, we're going to think through, can we treat that water on site? Could it potentially, here's one option. This is something called a tree trench. Could the water potentially go underground under where the tree roots are and be used that way or infiltrated into the site? Another option might be something you might be used to seeing, something like this, a rain garden. These are showing curb extensions. Could we potentially use a part of the road that is not currently being used for traffic or for parking, sort of a leftover space? Could we potentially use that for stormwater infiltration? So these are all things that we're going to be looking into more and studying and seeing how we could potentially work them into the project. I'm going to hand it over to John from the city briefly to mention 2 other projects that are happening adjacent to this one.
Thank you very much. We have many different projects throughout the city, and looking at just this piece of the project isn't the best idea. So we want to look at all of our projects as a whole. So we have 2 different projects on either end that are kind of working their way into our project, and we need to find a way to combine all of our projects together. So the first project is on the left-hand side of the page, which is the intersection at Shore Drive and Mystic Avenue. So this is a key project in creating the connection from across the Mystic Avenue and into Shore Drive and across to 10 Hills. So this is a key piece to providing accessible routes and bike connections into the Shore Drive area. The other project we have on the right-hand side of the page is the Mystic River Outfall and Sewer Separation Project. This project is a large-scale engineering project where we're looking to separate our combined sewer and separate that to help with environmental impacts and also with flooding throughout the neighborhoods. So this is a project where they're going to be installing a new outfall along the Mystic River, and we'll have to kind of work with our project to find a way to extend out to the Mystic River.
Thank you, John. And then last but not least, a very quick where we're at and where we're headed timeline. So you can see that we are over here on October 3rd, public meeting 1, right at the very beginning of this design and engineering phase. So we'll be coming back to you throughout this phase with updates and hearing from the community. And then after the design and engineering phase, there will be a period of permitting, bid process to find a contractor, construction, all leading to a great new greenway. So that's the end of the presentation. I just want to thank everybody for being here. And we're looking forward to working with you throughout this whole process and hearing what you have to say tonight. I'll hand it back over to you, Carl.
Great. Thank you, Shelby. If you do want to stay involved and in touch with the project, we will be posting up information at mysticriver.org/besting of the bay. We now would love to transition towards our Q&A discussion portion. So if you would like to, if you have any questions or would like to say anything, please do feel free to use the raise hand function in order to enter queue. My colleague Isaiah will be managing. I do see a hand raised from Councilor Clingan. Feel free to take.
Yeah, thank you. No questions or comments about this yet. I was trying to jump in while the gentleman from the city was talking about the outfall, just to let people know the date is not firm yet, but either November 13th or 20th, there'll be a second community meeting in person at the Mystic Activity Center. So just want to put that on your radar, but stay tuned for actual firm details on that.
Thank you very much, Councilor Clingan, for that. I actually did just get word this afternoon that it is set for that 13th date. So you can find out more information about that project by looking at the Summer Voice page for that. You can easily find it by just Googling Mystic Outfall Projects or by going to voice.somervillema.gov/mystic-river-outfall. And there's the Stay Informed feature on the bottom right-hand side. So if you enter your email in there, you'll get updates about all the future meetings about that.
Great. Thank you, John and Jesse. I wanted to go next to Caitlin Firth, and then afterwards, Edgar. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you so much. I'm really excited. I live right off of Mystic Ave and take this pathway very often to get to Trader Joe's and the tea. And so I know that you're in the exploratory studying phase, but once the project is kind of planned out and in progress, do you have any idea what what the construction will look like to keep that path open for folks, specifically for me riding a bike, not driving my car. If you have any answers on that, that would be great.
Um, yeah, I don't know if that might be a question for either John or Jim.
I'm happy to take a first stab at that. So through our permitting process, when we close down a sidewalk, greenway, any type of mobility, we have to provide detours and ways to get through the site. So that whole traffic management plan will be figured out during the permitting process, but I can assure you that there will always be a connection through the area throughout the entire construction process.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Edgar. You're on mute, Edgar.
There we go. Hi there. Thanks so much. I live right across the street from the pollinator meadow. This is now the 4th summer for us. We were promised this flowering oasis, but frankly, it looks more like a field of weeds. To many of us, it looks like the experiment really has failed. When does the experiment end? And will you consider giving us back our grass and taking down that ugly fence?
Great. Great. Thank you so much for asking that question, Edgar. We hope that this evening would be an opportunity to be able to talk about the other work that we've been having at the project site. I think the important thing is, we've really been approaching holistically improvements to the Blessing of the Bay Park, right? And so there are elements of the park that have been selected as really good sites to help improve ecology. There are other sites to really help improve recreation and mobility. And we're hoping that like a part of a cohesive vision that a meadow kind of fits into it. To your point in question regarding the fence, we wanted to keep it up during the establishment period. And we're expecting to actually remove it over the course of this winter. And in that process, also meet with DCR, who conduct operations of the park on a mowing strategy for the perimeter of the meadow. And so think about it as, still having long hair, but maybe getting a fresh trim. The meadow itself is a meadow, and I'd probably maybe turn it over briefly after I finish up my comment to Shelby and Jack to share on the ecology side of it. But it has established and it is working as intended. The plant list that we have is actually relatively narrow from DCR in terms of the type of species that were planted. They don't provide as much color pop as other meadows may do. We actually had to use a species list that was native to the county before colonization. So that kind of brought down the list a lot in terms of color. But we do hope, though, that once the temporary fence comes down, we're able to put up some permanent educational signage and enter into that more operations phase. That paired with all of the other improvements, the recent vegetative management on the shoreline helps to provide a nice picture for residents. So that's kind of the update we have to share on the meadow. And Shelby, I do want to turn it to you.
That was a great summary, Carl. I think things to watch out for Edgar in the next year are that idea of cues to care is it's a studied concept that when our landscapes look cared for, they're more appealing visually to humans. And so that is one of the goals as we enter into this next phase is, as Carl mentioned, mowing the perimeter edges to give it that frame to show that this is a natural area. And then also, I think once the planting beyond along the shoreline gets established, that will also help to create the vision. So we hear what you're saying and we totally understand, and hopefully these cues to care will start to help visually improve the site as we move forward. I shouldn't say hopefully. I think they will. It's also perception, right? a beauty is an eye of the beholder conversation as well.
I mean, to be honest, just look at it. Come down tomorrow. Look at this area. There are virtually no flowers there. It looks like, a bunch of dead weeds. It's horrible for us who live right across the street from it and those who pass it every day.
Yeah. Thank you, Edgar. We certainly understand your perspective on the appearance. It isn't lawn. It has different functions and different looks and different features, and there are also still species in it that haven't popped yet that can remain dormant for a few years. So we look forward to maintaining it in a really organized manner moving forward. But do understand that it is a meadow and will be longer than the other grass adjacent to it. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to hand it over to Lynn. I see you have your hand raised up.
Hi. Hi. Whoops, sorry, I'm trying to get my video up. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. I love how you're making sure to integrate this with other projects that are ongoing. My name is Lynn Weissman. I'm a Somerville resident. I'm also the co-leader and co-president of Friends of the Community Path. So I'm really excited to see this project getting started. I wanted to just echo one of the comments that someone mentioned about lighting, and I wanted to ask about that, how that works here, especially because I think it may be DCR land, and I don't know where that starts and ends. And then the other was kind of, it's great that you're looking at a 12-foot greenway. I guess the one thing I'm wondering about, especially with the sort of increased use of motorized scooters and bicycles, and even we're seeing like one wheels on the path going a little too fast. Just thinking about possible separation of wheeled users that may be going a little faster versus pedestrians. Just wondering, what options may have been considered. Is a one-way traffic lane a possibility on Shore Drive? I know there are residences there, but there are other ways to get in to that little area. So I just thought I would ask about those things. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't know, Shelby, would you like to start off on the lighting?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that is something we will be looking at as we get into the design, but there is a desire to have lighting along this corridor. And then Carl, I think that the second question is probably, well, or John, maybe, I don't know. But so we have these are great questions, Lynn, and I think in the next meeting we will, when we come back to you with a more fleshed out plan, as we've looked down the entire roadway, we'll be able to come back with some more answers. We have briefly started the process of looking into the design and thinking about what would be best practice. So John or Carl, I don't know if either of you want to mention thoughts about those one-way traffic. John, that might be a good question for you.
Yeah, so I think currently we aren't exploring one-way directional traffic. We are conducting some traffic counts that will lead to a better result of figuring out the flows throughout the space and what would happen if we made this one-directional traffic. But currently at this moment, we are trying to preserve the two directional traffic.
Thank you. Lynn, did that answer all of your questions, or are there any outstanding?
And
I like to think of this initial phase as looking at the project a little bit in 2D. Right, we're looking at cross sections, and then next phase is to start to look 3D at the different locations for signage and operations.
Right. Yeah, I think it's helpful. I mean, I think it would be great to just consider the possibility of one way. I know that sometimes the neighborhood might be very upset by that. A lot of times it ends up being less of an issue than people think it is because they're driving anyway and there are other routes in. So I would like to just open that up for safety purposes for possibly separating pedestrians and other faster wheeled users. I just wanted to put that out there. I really do appreciate though the 12-foot width at least, and the trees and everything else. But I did want to just put that out there because I'm sure on the community path, which is narrower than this, there are some vehicles that are unfortunately moving a little too fast for some people's comfort.
And just to respond to the electric bikes and different electric modes of transportation that aren't vehicles, I will discuss with mobility the idea behind this. I think there has been some conversations about this policy and how to deal with the safety along our community paths. So I will definitely check with mobility department on that concern, and then we can definitely talk about that at our next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, speed limits certainly wouldn't hurt. Of course, enforced. But, I'm just talking about this path and thinking about perhaps being a little proactive as well, in addition to possible speed limits.
Yes, definitely. These are all great tips that we will include in our next revision.
Thank you.
Excellent. Next, I'll Dan Jaffe, and then Councilor Clingan.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk a little bit about this speed issue of motor vehicles, mopeds and things like that. There are two different things. One, I would strongly recommend having signage. Maybe 15 miles an hour would be a good set point. And then rumble strips. Believe it or not, having every so often a rumble strip tends to slow those vehicles down. So you just basically take cobblestones and you have a reasonable sized joint, and you do that, let's say, just before the intersections, so that way they get the hint that they got to do slower. And things like that would be more beneficial than trying to dictate not driving or making the one way. I don't think this area really would be very functional with a one-way street scenario. I don't live there, but I pass through it often because I like to go to the park there. When I was riding my bicycle, I'd go over to McDonald Park and I'd go through that path. So anyways, I think that would be the better direction, is signage and rumble strips to break up the speed of these vehicles. And of course, having some sort of police presence would be beneficial too.
Great, thank you, Dan. And I just want to note, I think the rumble strips are definitely a good design consideration in addition to the signage to ensure safe operation. So thank you. Councilor Clingan.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just want to comment on a couple of things that people were saying. So just so you know that the council, like we've been discussing, signage is great, saying, no mopeds or scooters. Enforcement is better, and but then as far as signage goes, oftentimes, like people, if they think they're going to get caught, if they don't know what's at stake, then they may take the chance. But this is because there's a lot of delivery drivers that use the path to get around. So we're working on trying to figure out a hefty fine for people who get caught with a moped or something that's gas powered, not like scooters as in the ones you stand on. Talking about scooters, motorized devices that you essentially need a permit for to be on the street. So there's that. And then I would just say, unless I had overwhelming support from the neighborhood, I would not support one-way traffic on Shore Drive. This is an isolated neighborhood with very few ways in and out. So I just want to be on record of saying, so any people here know that it's a difficult neighborhood to enter and exit, especially if you try to turn in from Mystic Avenue down to Temple. So I would not be in favor of that unless the community came together and gave overwhelming support. So, but yeah, we definitely have our eye on the community paths and the type of use that it's been getting that is not safe for pedestrians or other users of the path.
Thank you, Councilor.
Carl, I would like to just address some of the comments in the chat. Pertaining to the rumble strip, that is definitely an interesting idea that we can explore, but one concern that comes to my head right off the bat is accessibility. We do want to make sure that these pathways are 100% accessible to any use, pedestrian or bicycle, scooter, what have you. So we would definitely have to explore that because we do want to ensure that this pathway is 100% accessible.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there wouldn't be any intent to make anything more dangerous than a typical shared use path for sure. I do see that there was somebody in the chat who wasn't able to raise their hand. Janine, would you like to unmute? Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I have to agree with the person who spoke before. I'm finding more and more powered devices on the path from the one-wheel motorcycle. And let's be honest, yeah, they're electric, but the fact is they have a motorcycle helmet on and motorcycle padding because they can go friggin' fast. I'm seeing that, and some of them they're 20-year-olds. They don't understand families being out there, and they don't care because they're invincible at 20. And what I see a lot is them causing accidents, and not just the one wheels, people with scooters and stuff, and leaving the disaster behind them, and not even realizing that they've hurt somebody. Well, because somebody older gets spooked and tries to get out of the way and falls down. The signage doesn't seem to have any effect. Saugus is cool. They have cops every once in a while on their bike paths. But we need more because the less that it's enforced, the more and more, it's just becoming more prevalent. There's more of them. Once before, a few years ago, it was hardly ever you would see this, but it's becoming more and more. Sometimes it seems like half the riders out there are some type of motorized vehicle. I understand that the bicycles that you have to pedal to, get some charge, that's fine. But I don't care. Some of these things are glorified mopeds on a bike frame. I'm out there on a bike. I've got people out there with 6-year-old kids. We don't need these. They should be out on the street. If they're truly a motorized vehicle, which they are, I don't care if it's a bike frame or not, they should be out on the street. And there should be a cop day once a month. Every city should have their cops go out there and just, deter it. Just having people, not knowing when the cops are going to show up will help that. And it's really kind of making the going on our paths a negative event when we see more of this. And like I said, the less that it's deterred, the more it just encourages the bad behavior. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janine. And I think I'd like to just, echo the sentiments. We've discussed this already several times, and it's definitely going to help inform the design. We do, the best way to help inform speeds is through design, and through other, other really important measures like signage. We do know that somebody passed away on one of these mopeds on the Northern Strand last year, if I recall correctly, up in Malden. And so it's not just the safety of others, but these individuals as well. They're these facilities are not designed for 30-mile-an-hour speeds. We definitely are going to be really careful and considerate as we're moving forward on this topic. Are there any other questions, comments? For folks? All right, great. Well, I think then we can wrap up. Oh, Lynn, feel free to provide perhaps the last comment in the evening.
Thank you. Again, I'm curious about the integration with the boathouse and the mix of pedestrian and, bicycle traffic coming from there, and if anything special is being considered for that area along with the parking lot. I mean, I know this must work with your plan for intersection with the crossing at Route 38, So I just thought I would ask what sort of considerations there are. There's a little star-shaped path almost there by the boathouse now. But yeah, if you could just, if any special considerations you've been thinking about.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think definitely looking forward to sharing any initial designs that we have for the intersection with kind of the stewards and tenants at the boathouse is going to be important. There's a lot of as there's boats going across the path is something that you don't see for every greenway as something to consider. But Shelby or Jim, from a design perspective, is there anything that you would like to add?
I think, Lynn, that's a great question and something we'll certainly be thinking of. Our project scope for this part really is not getting into that territory, but we'll, as Carl said, we'll be thinking collaboratively about what's happening there and making sure that those are safe intersections, as well as looking at the design work happening at that intersection.
And so there's design work at the intersection, and then there's the work on this project, but then the blessing of the bay and the parking lot area isn't integrated somehow into that sort of connecting piece right now. It would be great if it could be. I mean, clearly it's a very important nexus there. So if that's like a literally a missing link, it would be nice if somehow that were in the mix.
Thank you, Lynn. Just to respond to that, so a little bit of background about this. The Shore Drive portion is city-owned land. The Blessing of the Bay is DCR-owned land. So there is kind of we need to work together on this project. And like Shelby and Carl have mentioned before, this is a multi-phased approach to the project. So the first idea here is to kind of work on the Shore Drive and have conversations with DCR as we're working on those so that we can seamlessly tie our work in together. But at this moment, we're trying to focus our work on the Shore Drive portion where the city owns most of the land and the city can kind of do what's best for the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shelby, would you just like to bring it back to the last slide? As we wrap up this evening, just as a reminder, we'll be posting information about the project as they become available on the project webpage, mysticriver.org/blessing of the bay. And that includes the recording from tonight's meetings, the presentation slides, and all content and information moving forward. Please do keep an eye out for future opportunities for engagement. We're currently scheduled to have 2 additional public meetings for the project over the course of the coming months. And you know what? I did not put my contact information here, but my contact information is on the project webpage, and I will put it in the chat right now. That being said, I'd like to thank you very much for coming out tonight, and have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you so much.